Kara Swisher is here to talk with us about the state of tech leadership, AI, journalism, the media business, and her best-selling Burn book. All that and more is coming up right after this. Welcome to Big Technology Podcast, a show for cool-headed, nuanced conversation of the tech world and beyond. We are joined once again by Kara Swisher. She's the host of On with Kara Swisher and the Pivot Podcast, and the author of the best-selling new book, Burn Book, which I just finished and loved, and the best tech journalist to do it. Kara, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. You have such a good podcast voice. I wish
Thank
I had
you.
this good one. Hello there. You could do like smooth jazz at midnight. That kind of thing.
Well, that's what we aim for, as long as people don't fall asleep.
Yeah,
that's a good
that's
thing.
Okay sometimes. Anyway.
So, I have had some people who are like, yeah, I like to put on your podcast and go to bed. And I'm like, look, as long as the analytics are complete, then
that's
we'll
correct.
take it.
That's actually better because they listen through the
Exactly.
whole thing.
So, congratulations, best-selling book.
Thank you.
You signed a 2-book deal. This one, obviously, a memoir talking about your interactions with the tech community and your reporting over the years.
Yep.
Any thoughts on what the second one's going to be about?
There are some thoughts. It's about the future tech, really. It was broadly about, where it's a little more positive. It's a little more where things are going. It's as if I know a lot now, and so I want to sort of look at the positive parts of it, and where it's not going to necessarily be positive because as usual it's me, but I think it's going to be a very fair-minded look at where things are going, whether it's psychedelics or the some of the drug discovery or cancer or a range of things. I'm doing it with my brother, who's a doctor. I think it's really important because a lot of it will focus on healthcare. And just some of the stuff. I think I'll probably have a little bit of what's been in Burn Book at the end in it. AI is obviously part of it, so something like that, I think. But I might change my mind. I might just write I'm fascinated with these, I just interviewed Charles Duhigg, who did super communicators, and you have the atomic habits. I'm thinking of trying to write one of those and see if I can have a bestseller at that, just because I think it's a formula. I have them all, and so I'm like, maybe I could pull this off. I don't know what I'd call it.
So what is the formula for those?
There's not much, I'll tell you that. There's like a few studies that just string together. I just interviewed Jonathan Haidt, for example. You have a premise, then you string a few studies together, and then you get in arguments with people. That seems to be the way to do it.
Okay, so this wasn't in my notes, but since you're fresh off a conversation with Jonathan Haidt, very interesting guy. He basically this whole book is talking about how social media has led to a rise in depression among teens. But there's been a very big pushback to him.
From social scientists,
Bigger than I
not
expected.
Not from parents. It's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot of noisy social scientists arguing with each other, and he's wrong and they're wrong. And I think it's right in the middle. He included some real shitty studies. There's no way around it. And I said, I'd characterize them as, and I go, and he goes, how would you characterize them? I go, shitty. And he goes, oh. And I'm like, they are, John. And he goes, yes, some of them are. I think he's left himself open in that regard. At the same time, directionally, he's correct. And I just think, we could either be in the situation where it's like the video games. Remember, video games were going to make us all killers. Right. And that wasn't the case. That was, or dirty song lyrics. Thank you, Tipper Gore. Didn't really make us all dirty necessarily. And so I think some people are worried that he relies on there's no causality versus correlation. And so I think my pushback to him was, there was also COVID, and there was also Trump, and there was also climate change, and there was also, lists of things. So which one of them is hurting kids more, right? And I do believe, I've always been a long time believer that social media, the deleterious effects we'll know them in 20 years. But I think if he wants to make this broad statement, he needs a little more proof. I don't think he's incorrect in the end. Him and, it's not Twenge, it's I can't pronounce it. She was the one he based some of his work on. And then we had a big argument about the stuff around trans, making people trans by reading about trans people. It's just nonsense. There's no proof. It's just a right-wing trope, and I thought he fell into it. And he used the word in part, in part, like people read about it, so then they know about it. And I was like, there's literally been no change in the amount of people who do transitioning. And I said that in part is doing a lot of work here. Stuff like that. So it was good, though. But a lot of what he says is absolutely true. Kids need to play more. The screens have a deleterious effect on especially girls. I think directionally he's correct. I just think he's got to bring more especially on a controversial topic, especially when tech companies are going to push back at him.
Definitely.
You know.
And I've been fascinated by the debate there, so I can't wait to listen to that episode.
I had a question from one of the people I thought was some of the debaters, some of the skeptics are just it's not good faith argument, but some of them are, and I used one of them who I thought was having a great debate with him about it, to ask him a question as my expert question. So I like the debate about it, and I think in the end probably it won't be as unclear once we realize the impact on our kids. But it's almost like us, what was the effect of the Gutenberg Bible? What was the effect of telephones? What was the effect of cars? Like,
significant.
It's a significant effect. The question is, I've heard from gay teens, it's the best thing that ever happened to them back in my day because they got to be able to meet other gay teens, right? That's a good thing. So I think it just has to be a little more, instead of just being a moral panic, which I don't think he's doing. People are accusing of that. Instead of being a moral panic that we haven't paid attention to, and so we feel extra guilty, and so now we have to react to it. Mm-hmm. It's obviously a significant, just the way the introduction of cars was, or the introduction of the telephone, and the tech companies spent a lot of time not age gating, not giving us the real data. So, I'm in the middle with him.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the people building these products. It would be fun to just go through a couple of the characters that you have in the book. I'd love to start with Mark Andreessen. Andreessen Horowitz just raised $7.2 billion in a new fund.
Did he?
Now, Mark is so smart. He's obviously extremely intelligent, and he's so successful, but also so bitter and so interested in shutting out any part of the debate. At least some people in this is social media hurting us debate are coming out and having the discussion, while some people just don't want to have the discussion.
Well, he's on the board of Facebook, I guess. I've never met someone who's so smart, who's so stupid. I don't know how else to say about him. He's such a small-minded person. I hate to say that about people, but he's frequently wrong, but he's never in doubt, and it's a really bad way to be when you're, and of course he uses his wealth and success as his shield, which I don't think it is. He's had plenty of disasters himself, so he should know better.
Yeah, I would just think that you'd want to engage.
Good, I'm glad he's rich. Good, he's rich. All right, got it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Anyway.
Okay, but that doesn't make him any better than my art teacher. I don't know. She wasn't rich. She was a wonderful teacher. I don't know what to say. These people think that money and inventing a browser gives them a license to say anything they want about everything. And honestly, they're experts at what they're experts on, and the other stuff, I'm a little less inclined to have to listen to their blather.
Right. And so just to go from one to the next, let's talk about Elon for a minute. What's your read on the state of Elon? Tesla today... We're talking on Monday. This episode's coming out Wednesday at 10%. They're cutting 10% of their workforce. Mm-hmm. That stock has been cut in half and then some.
Yeah.
What's your read on the state of where Elon is? And do you have any sense that Tesla is struggling in part because he's distracted by Twitter?
Yes, I think yes to all. I think, look, Tesla was inevitably going to get its comeuppance because there's going to be let's see what he did that's an accomplishment. He really did push forward this industry. There's no one you could give more credit to than him in pushing forward the electric vehicle thing. Google tried a little bit, but he really did it, right? And so a lot of people tried, and he did it. And so that was great. And he came out with a car that was innovative and interesting. It's as if Steve Jobs invented the iMac and then stopped. That's what it feels like. It's like he did the Y and the X, the Y, but then Cybertruck, come on. Come on.
You're not going to get a Cybertruck?
No, it looks terrible. Fine if someone wants to buy it, but it's not a groundbreaking car everyone's going to be in, right? So he sort of lost the narrative on what was a very innovative company and a very forward-leaning company, and inevitably there was going to be. It's as if he didn't think there was going to be competition once he created, but he felt like just because he created, he owned the space, but he doesn't. The planes are covered with the bodies of pioneers. That's how I look at it in the U.S. Not everyone gets to California, some kind of thing, and so I think he's no question a pioneer, no question a great entrepreneur, business person more than a technologist, I suspect, is how it's going to end up in history. And, kind of a hand-wavy P.T. Barnum, too, which is part of the package of doing that. You need to be like that. Who then curdled into something very strange, right? He became less entertaining than sort of toxic. And so, obviously, he was going to have competition, too. he hasn't kept an eye on the ball on innovation, and that there just hasn't been the product line is sad and tired, right? And it's the design isn't like all these cars are coming out. The Rivian's so good looking. And, someone who's really prominent said, I don't know why every Tesla has to look like the inside of an egg. And I agree. I don't want to buy it. It's the most unromantic. Oh, it leaves me cold. The car leaves me cold. But once you see cool ones, you're like, oh, look at that Porsche. Look at that BMW. Like, why wouldn't you? And if they're cheaper, I have a Chevy Bolt, so I shouldn't talk about sexy, but I love it. It's fun, And so I just think he dropped the ball on innovation at the company. I think he alienated most of his natural buyers by being such an asshole. And I think that he's indulging his personal need to say, speaking of which, saying anything about everything, and offending people. So, if you have a choice and this guy's an asshole, you don't buy, and it's not new and it's not a compelling product. It's a recipe for what's happening right now.
But it is interesting because, like, if trying to wrap a bow around what Elon is sort of very difficult right now because, of course, struggles with Twitter. Tesla is not doing very well, though we'll see what happens. It's a stock price thing. But then Neuralink is pretty impressive. So
sort of. Well, no, let me just tell you, there are 10 companies like Neuralink. He's not the only one. So that's the thing. He acts like he invented the moon. Like, he just didn't. There are other companies who aren't as hand wavy as him. So I don't know if it's impressive. I'd like to actually get it away from his showing off a guy who can do this is one thing. I would like to see the science. I'd like him to open it up. I'd like people to see it. I'd like reporters to report on the 10 other companies that are doing this. Which they don't because it doesn't have Elon Musk attached. But several companies have put electrodes. He's embedded them. They are on the outside, whatever. There's all kinds of fascinating, interesting things. But I think that's hand-waving versus actual, we're a long way from doing what he wants to do. But I welcome it. This would be great. How's he going to monetize it? How's he going to make it money at it? He's certainly been innovative at Starlink and SpaceX. The solar thing. Solar's now falling off, so that's going to be a problem. His solar city is going to suffer, even if it's a good company. The digging thing, okay, how's that going to make money, right? Like, I think the space stuff, is the most interesting stuff, where he's got a really great CEO in Gwen Shotwell, who should get more credit than she does, who's managing things. So Gwen is doing a great job.
So also on the space thing, let's just talk about Starlink for a second. Mm-hmm. There's been this big debate about whether Elon should be the one controlling Starlink. He did put it up there in space. Shouldn't the government?
His company did.
His company did, not him personally. But don't you think the government, if it's like seeing this as a national security thing, should build its own version of Starlink? And so it's not like
probably they should have, but he was more innovative and faster. Right. So that was a great idea. So he and his company were. Yes, they should. I think he should be just like any other vendor, Lockheed or anybody else, but he doesn't see himself that way. So it's a private company. So in this case, it's the government's fault. He can do what he damn well pleases, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So,
I think that the criticism of how could Elon have all this control? It's like, well, if this is a public
good,
I'm
worried. Why is some guy who I'm not sure what he's doing at 3 a.m. in charge of this and is not an expert on anything? That's my issue.
Right. No doubt. I guess I would just say that the focus tends to be on him, but really the government has a large role to play here. Mm-hmm. But I guess we agree there.
Yeah. I think the government should be running it. I just don't understand why our government allowed this to happen. Just like a lot of I believe in public-private partnerships, but at some point these are in the public interest. The public part should be driving the car, but he is. In that
Definitely.
case.
It's amazing in the Walter Isaacson book where you basically see the Obama administration cede everything space to SpaceX.
Totally. And not just SpaceX, Jeff Bezos. It's whatever. I have thoughts on the Obama administration. Yeah.
Zuckerberg. So you have some very colorful language about Zuckerberg in the book.
I do.
You say, fuck your metaverse. You say Mark Zuckerberg wasn't an asshole.
And he did. And he's done it.
Did.
Yes, and he's done. So.
He wasn't an asshole.
But he did. He started defunding it, so I was right. So thank you.
He has pulled back funding.
Yeah, he has pulled back from the. Have you seen him waving his hands about? He's now in Mr. AI now.
Now he is.
Remember, he was
AI.
Mr. Cryptocurrency. That didn't work. Then he was Mr. Metaverse. Now he's Mr. AI. Good one. He finally got to the right place.
But in some ways, you have to take all these bets. I guess
not that one. No,
not the Metaverse.
No, he didn't.
So
it's totally an egomaniacal move on him.
Well, but on the other hand, it's also you have to keep reinventing the company. Clearly, he was seeing that
Yes.
use of the Blue app was
I think he
fading.
didn't have enough people saying no on
Right.
that one. If he had the right people, they would have said AI is where we need to focus, Mark, a long time ago.
When you think about the decisions that he's made on content, for instance, do you think two things for you? Do you think that Musk has made him look better in retrospect?
Yes, that's a gift to him that keeps on giving. He looks like a lovely guy. It's sort of, yeah, he is. He's not a villain. Like Musk is like playing a Bond villain. It's like he's moving into Bond villain territory. But and Mark was sort of adjacent, Bond villain adjacent kind of thing. No, I think Mark's a good business person. He's a little like Bill Gates, and you saw the transformation of Bill Gates over the years. He has a sort of Darth Vader character to a much more interesting character in that regard. He's just a businessman. I think we tend to have an idolatry of these people, and honestly, I don't know why we do. And so, he's a flawed human being. He's made good decisions and bad decisions. He's good at making money. He's he was good at his product, his one product, which he did a great job on, and now he's trying really hard to stay relevant, like the rest of us, right? And so. So good for him to do it. He'll make mistakes along the way. It's sort of like, it reminds me of haircuts. Like, oh, that haircut didn't work out so well. Now this one's good. That kind of thing. Yeah. And he's right to move into the AI direction. I think he's been incredibly sloppy and mismanaging of the social network. As you know, I wrote about it in terms of his responsibility and the true costs of what he's doing. I think he's not bearing the true costs. We are. I've said that over and over again, and they're doing it again, cutting off stuff in California because they want to charge for it. Or Google is one of them. They're all doing it.
Yeah, they take turns.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're also getting out of news, and I've seen you speak critically of that. I think getting out of news is a good thing, like the meshing of news and Facebook.
I don't think I'm not critical. I think they shouldn't be in news if they're going to do it badly.
At all.
That's then get the fuck out of it. That said, they have now hollowed out the news business, the business of it, digital advertising they control, and they don't contribute anything back. And I think that's grotesque, but they should be able to do it, right? They've ruined the business, and now they're not going to do it. And before they ruined the business, and they were doing it badly. So I guess I want them to do the first, then the second. But they shouldn't be, and they weren't good at it. And so I think there's a way to do it well, but I guess I can't have them do that. They can't possibly, avail themselves to do a good job at it. And there are ways to do it. It's just costly is what it is.
And what is the solution then?
I think it's a very bad business. I don't know, because you always get sucked up into partisanship and information, and I think everyone should be able to be sued, because then you do a lot better at your business if you have the threat of lawsuits, essentially. So that's not happening, and so they're never going to be good at it until they can be sued. And it's just not. They see the numbers, they know what works on their platforms, and fun videos work a lot better than news, so they're not going to do it. It's too much. They spend probably, I bet, I'll take it to a different company. I bet David Zaslav spends 90% of his heartache on CNN, and it's 5% of his business, right? Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Maybe best for everybody if they're out.
Well, except they've decimated the actual business, right? So that's not good.
Correct. So. I mean, it's also, but this is a thing though, right? Isn't it also incumbent upon the news business to have other models that are not Facebook reliant?
Yes, that's correct. That's what I've done. I don't trust. I remember when Sheryl Sandberg called me and she's like, "Come on Facebook Live." I'm like, "Why?" She goes, "Well, you'll be bigger." I said, "I'm plenty big. Like, what do I get?" And they go, "Well, we'll give you some money." I'm like, "Why should I?" It's like you're buying friends. I don't understand why you'd give me money to be on it. Like, that makes no sense. If it's a good business, it's a good business. I always felt it was like I'm like, why should I didn't say this to her, but I thought, why should I fucking paint your fence? I'm not interested in that. So.
Well, I was at BuzzFeed News during that time, and we exploded
you love painting other people's fences. You love painting.
And at the end of the day, that might have been the pinnacle. That watermelon blowing up might have been.
That was a great moment. I mean, with the
rubber bands.
Rubber bands, yeah, that was cool. That was cool.
It was, but fleeting.
Fleeting, but cool.
Cool. Sundar, right person to lead Google. It's interesting because it's like they're hitting all-time highs. They seem to be getting the ship together with cloud, but still seem to.
Well, I think the thing on him, they think he's indecisive, right? I think that's what most of the complaints you hear from internally from them.
Right.
I mean, he's certainly better than Larry and Sergey, that's for sure. I mean, those two, like, okay, that would be a disaster.
Why a disaster?
Because they've lost the narrative, the two of them. You can,
Really?
know, all their whack stuff they're doing, all that. When they got to floating showrooms out in San Francisco Bay, I was like, and scene.
That was their watermelon
That's
moment.
what rich people do when they get bored.
Yeah.
I think he's a very competent executive. Probably could have someone a little more aggressive, I guess. They have so many assets, like you could imagine. They should be like he and I had an argument years ago when they weren't in cloud. And I said, why are you letting Amazon take your natural business? And he's like, well, we're using all our capacity, right, for our products. And I said, well, get more. Like, you shouldn't let them have, that's your business kind of thing. And he's just a cautious person. They should be dominating in so many areas. I think they're probably hindered by regulatory issues in terms of buying things. They have to be very careful about what they buy. I like Sundar Pichai. I think he's a really thoughtful person, but I see why people think he's cautious.
I was in the room when you were interviewing him, and he said that line about AI being akin to fire and electricity, and everyone's like, that was a weird thing to say, but
yeah.
Turns out that he was right on that.
No, he is. He's a very thoughtful. And I met him when he was a product manager when he did the browser, so the Chrome browser. And I always thought he was very careful. People in tech don't like careful people, so he's probably boring to them. And Tim Cook has managed to get over that, like, because the stock is so high. It goes up and down, but it's about 10x from when Steve Jobs ran it, right? So, he's managed to escape, but he still has. I was somewhere and they're like, Tim Cook is just not inspiring. I'm like, it's worth 10 times more than Steve Jobs. 10 times. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's a very good performance. They're just not inspired by the AirPods, I guess.
Right, but it is a good question about Tim Cook as well. It's next on the list, actually, because it's like
10x. It's 10x. That's all I have to say. If you're a shareholder, you think it's great. You're happy. All right. What do you expect them to do? Give you a magical unicorn every year? It's not happening. And it didn't happen under Jobs either, by the way.
Right. No, I think the main question is, so Tim Cook has kept the culture that they had under Jobs that's helped them build this iPhone, refine the iPhone. I have the 15.
Just the way Satya does, too.
Yeah. And it's great. But there's, you look at Apple's ability to build the next big thing.
Yeah.
And you wonder, no car, right? They failed there. And the AI, we're going to have a big announcement about AI from Apple.
Well, they don't collect information the others do. They don't have those assets. So that was their business plan, was to not do that. So that makes sense. Okay. Why they have to partner with someone. They don't collect information the way the others do. They're not information thieves the way the others are.
Do you think that they'll be able to figure out the products, though, under Cook when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I think you'll see. It'll be something so subtle. I know you're expecting some, like, beautiful, gorgeous thing, but yeah, I think your phone will talk to your AirPods better, and then it'll all coordinate. If they do that, that'll be. Look at everyone's software and services have grown like enormously under Tim Cook. Like, It's not that exciting, but it sure does make money, right? That kind of stuff. He's not as exciting. I just think it's. He's just not as exciting, and at the same time, business processes are just as important as products. And I think to expect some wow event is something of the past. That's not going to happen. A lot of it will be incremental, and the incremental, since they're such big businesses, is enormous.
So third in a row in terms of leader who's taken over from a founder and sort of isn't as exciting, Jassy, Andy Jassy at Amazon.
Yeah.
Has his, we can do Satya next. Has Jassy's vision for Amazon come through to you? Are you do you think you have a good picture of what Amazon's going to do under him?
The healthcare moves, I think, are really interesting. We'll see where they go, right? I think it's smart. It's smart for you to trust Amazon as your provider of. He took a little while to get out of that stupid store thing, but I'm sure it was compelling to them in some fashion why they were doing that. I think he probably doesn't know what to do with Whole Foods. Like, what are we doing this for? But I guess
apparently that's a disaster.
Well, it's supposed to probably a delivery. It should have just been a delivery warehouse of food, right? I guess to make because they're good at delivery. I've always thought of the company as a logistics company, so I'm not like waiting for some mind-blowing situation. But of all the companies I use that most actively and regularly, and it works really well. And again, it's not as exciting, but I don't see anyone challenging it. I don't see anyone challenging Amazon in the food and product delivery space of any heft whatsoever. It's not Uber. That was going to be Uber, if you remember. It's going to be this and that. But I don't see anyone challenging them.
And so you're not on the Shein and Temu train?
We'll see. If you want to buy cheap shit and get it delivered too quickly, I suppose. Yeah. No, that's logistics. I mean, they're very good at logistical stuff. Amazon doesn't make as much stuff as Shein does. That's a slightly different business. But, that's a different business. If you want to buy a certain product that's, here in front of me, I got these from Amazon. These are these ginger chews. I'm not getting them from Shein. I'm not going to eat their ginger chews either.
No way.
So I don't know. I feel like I haven't seen anyone supplant Amazon as yet in that area. But you'll get more of your stuff from them. They did get into fast fashion at Amazon, and they just didn't do a great job of it. And Shein does a better job. So in that area, sure, they'll do better. We'll see how they do on the other products too. They're already seeing growth problems, that company.
Right. And then in terms of the pattern, I actually think Satya Nadella stands out a bit in that he is more exciting than the previous three, talking about how he wants to make Google dance, really changing the culture of Microsoft, changing the focus. Do you think he tied himself too closely to OpenAI? Because now it seems like they're trying to hedge.
No, I don't. No, I think I think that was a smart move. I think he's got to do it himself. I think picking up great information and great computing resources, that company sure should be right in the middle of this. No, I thought that was smart. He affiliated himself. He's going to do stuff on their own. He's placing bets in several different good places. That makes sense to me. I don't know. I think if they not invented here is a stupid way to behave, and I think he knows that in this case.
Towards the end of the book, you talk about Sam Altman also. And Sam kind of strikes me as an earnest leader and the real deal. What's your perspective on Sam?
I think he's super aggressive. I've met him when he was 19, so I have a long history with him. He's like the rest of them. He's super aggressive. He's much more thoughtful. He has much calmer voice and everything else. He at least, leans in the direction of there could be problems here. None of them ever said that, so that makes him a unicorn, like when he actually admits possible mistakes. I don't think he wants to be an oracle of everything. I appreciate that. I think I like the people he affiliates himself with. I think he's sort of a counterweight to Elon in that regard. At the same time, he's an aggressive entrepreneur, so he's going to do everything in his interests. Again, one of the real mistakes people make is to make these people, any of them, into saviors or that they're going to change everything. They're just business people to me. They're not unlike the people who provided us with Coke or Twinkies or anything else. And I didn't praise them, so I'm not going to praise them. They're good at what they do. I think he'll do whatever's in his interests. I don't care. I don't mind that. He doesn't pretend he's not. He can go on and on about changing the world if he wants. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But he mostly is pretty honest about his aims, which is to build the biggest company. And boy, he's got a lot of challenges from a legal point of view, and he has everyone on his ass. So, he's got to raise a lot of money, the chips thing, the expense, and he's got to make money. I mean, you have subscriptions, but I suspect it's not a very big business.
Right. And you brought it up a couple of times, but this notion of these people aren't saviors kind of goes to like the first sentence of your book. So it was capitalism after all.
Yeah.
Because they talk a lot about saving the world. And of course, like it is
they
a lot
sure
of
did.
This stuff has been motivated by capitalism. But then again, like, it, sort of like seems like none of this could have happened without it, whether they were trying to save the world or not.
No, I don't mind it. What I minded is their ridiculously high-minded bullshit nonsense that they had to foist on us. Like, you didn't have the guy who made Tootsie Rolls do that, right? I am here to bring the world through sweetness to a better place. Like,
that was actually world-saving technology, though.
It was. I love a Tootsie Roll, and it makes me happier than most products. But nonetheless, it was like, it's just nonsense. And so they actually believe it. For some reason, they weren't hugged enough as children, or they just don't. I don't know what's wrong with them from a psychological point of view, but they have to be beloved and savior-like in order to excel. They're just making stuff and they're selling it, and I wish they just say that and have a little more care, not to tell me they're not creating a nasty version of capitalism and then make a nasty version of capitalism. Because capitalism has great parts, but it also has real unpleasant implications.
Yeah,
unfettered, it's terrible.
And last one on the list is Mark Cuban, who's interesting because he is like basically straight up business person.
He is.
And you praise him in the book, and
I do.
I'll do it here too. He seems, at least when I've spoken with him, someone who's just the person that he is. He's not trying to put on airs.
He was kind of a bro in the beginning. You probably didn't meet him back then, but he was a real bro. He was a heavy bro and kind of an asshole, and we'd argue a lot. And, I didn't think broadcast.com was anything but I was like, this is a business. I think you're just taking advantage of the moment, and I can't believe they paid that much for it. He was all mad because he thought it was a real business. Later, he'd be like, oh, you were right. It was kind of not a nothing burger. But I think he's pursuing interesting things. I think he's very straightforward. He calls it as he sees it. He's sort of a counterweight. He feels like an adult. Again, it's thin gruel out there. So you take any port in the storm in that regard. But he's I like him personally.
Yeah, same here. So as I was reading through the book, I was like trying to think about like what is like if there's a through line between what makes a successful leader, what is it? And it's so interesting because we've talked about so many different types of personalities at the helms of these companies. And some leaders, like, they have real ego, and some and so arrogant, and then some are just they feel nice pretty humble.
Satya's
and they're
nice
nice.
Guy. Sam's a nice guy. Mark's a nice guy.
Exactly. So I'm curious what you think about like whether that plays into at all whether someone's successful as a business leader.
I don't think there's anything. I think the only thing that I'd say is sort of an ability to be persistent. They're persistent. Right. They stick with. I'm persistent too. So I think persistence is an unsung trait among people. Some people think contrarianism is a good thing. I think it always ends up becoming curdled. You know what I mean? I'm just being against it to be against it because I want to destroy. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think persistence is the one that I would say they're persistent, and that's a good thing. And they don't get. Failure doesn't bother them as much. They are able to accept failure and move along, and I think that's always a good quality. Although I prefer the ones who, when they don't say it's not a failure, I'm like, it was a failure. Like they admit it, and then they're like, okay, we're going to try this. Yeah. That's what an adult does.
So I don't know if you saw there was this kind of thought experiment about if you put somebody in a room with Garry Kasparov and gave them like unlimited tries to beat him at chess, how long would it take for them to do it? And a lot of the chess masters were like, they would never beat Gary.
Never.
And some people are like, well, it would take this amount of time and they'd eventually be able to do that. And so when I'm thinking more about like what takes a successful leader, do you think successful tech leaders have that Garry Kasparov sort of ability to build this stuff?
Or that chess is
timing
all different. I think sometimes it's luck. Oftentimes there's a whole lot more luck going on than anything else. It's someone who has a good idea and is able to shift quickly. I think that is a quality that's great. But the idea that these are more special, unicorns than you and I is just not true. It's just not true. Some of them are. Some of them are really quite gifted in what they do. What they tend to do then is shift off into other areas they're not so good at, or pontificating. Like VCs talking about Ukraine. No, thank you. They're idiotic beyond belief, most of them. Yes. But I think there is a quality of it's an entrepreneurial quality that not everybody has, and that is true. Like I'm more entrepreneurial than the average reporter, and that's why I think I've done well. So why am I like that? Lots of reasons. I have a disputatious personality. I want to work for myself, and that's just the way I am, like the way I'm built. And it helps to be that way in what my aims. But if I had to be at an office, I'd have problems. I'd be at the bottom of the totem pole for sure.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. So thinking about like the people that occupy these levels of power, do you think that we're living in something close to a meritocracy, or is it really a shuffling of like the top echelons of society?
I think they end up helping each other, and then they think it's because I think the first one, yes, I'll give it to them. The second one, not as much, right? I think they think that I think in the book I say this. They think it's a meritocracy. It's a meritocracy,
right?
And they somehow think they did it all. And just like Elon taking credit for everything, like he can't do anything without taking credit. It's so Trumpian. Like only I can do this, which is like, give me a fucking break.
But I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do you think someone like born in an average family with no connections to the tech industry could make it?
Yeah, for sure. Yes, just like everything else. They could start a yogurt store too. Right? So sure. Yeah, why not? I do think, again, persistence really does set them apart. They just keep going. And that is not a small thing. And that doesn't require intelligence. You do have to have a level of intelligence, that's for sure. But like a lot of these people aren't as highly. Steve Jobs wasn't technical. He knew about technology, but he wasn't technical. He was inspirational, and he could, he's the one that said podcasting to me the first time. He said something,
on stage,
the privacy on stage.
Yeah.
Like he just was a big thinker. He was a big thinker, and I think he was a special thinker, and then of course he becomes the character he is, right? So then you have that, checking in. So that's a whole nother thing, is they become, some of them are smart enough to resist becoming savior, God, oracle-like figures, and some people aren't. But, you look at someone like Jobs, and he had so many wins. It's sort of like a sports team. It's like, okay, they're better. Like so many so many wins. Yeah. You're like, come on. At this point, they can retire on their wins. But I think about that a lot of good in anyone else. I was when I was doing All Things D, there was about in year 15. I'm like, I should just retire now. I've done enough, right? A kind of thing. And so, these people keep going, and that's a really great quality of them.
Right. And you haven't retired, and you even write in the book about your decision to. Even like you wrote right after you wrote about your stroke that you're like, I just want to work. Yeah,
I like working. I enjoy it. I'm good at it. I'm good at what I do, and why wouldn't I want to keep? And I have all these interesting ideas, and I want to bring them. I am really an entrepreneur in a lot of ways, and so I'm kind of interested to see. Like right now, I'm super interested in video. I don't know why. I'm like, why is everyone calling this the end of this when I don't think it's the end, right?
Right.
And so I just want to see. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. And so I just really like to try different things, and so I that's why I'll keep working, because it interests me. If I was interested in gardening, I'd do that, but I'm not.
Yeah. So we've talked about in terms of the nature of a leader, ego, success, power, and how about money? I mean, how do you think money changes people, and does it inevitably change everyone that gets it?
No. There's a lot of rich people who are perfectly fine. Mark Cuban would be one of them. He's just, he's got a lot of money. Obviously, he just paid $270 million and $76 million in taxes. Not everybody, no, but a lot of people, yes, because what happens is they get surrounded by enablers that tell them they're so smart, and then they think they're so smart, and so the weaker characters tend to become weaker still by that. And so inevitably, when you're that rich, you get more and more into a bubble of wealth that is really hard to break out of. I find it sometimes. I'm leaving some of these people, and they have their chiefs of staff and their planes, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to leave and get on this bike and go out. And they can't do that for lots of reasons, or don't think they can do that. And so I do think it can be a real prison, a very comfortable prison, but a prison nonetheless.
Exactly. Kara Swisher is here. She's the author of Burn Book, which you can get in your bookstore of choice. We'll be back right after this. And we're back here with Kara Swisher on Big Technology Podcast, talking about Burn Book, the state of technology. And let's talk about AI a little bit more.
Okay,
one of the most interesting things that I read from in the book about AI was this quote from Elon, and then your response to it. So you say that Elon said we really need to think of intelligence as not being uniquely confined to humans, and that potential for intelligence in computers is far greater than in biology. And you write, Musk was right.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I agree. It's a different kind of intelligence. I think we anthropomorphize it, a little too much, like they're going to kill us or they want to kill us or anything like that. But sure, it makes sense. If someone can crunch numbers faster, it's just a different kind of intelligence. And it works very well with data. That's
right. And so then do you think that we're that the hype around this current cycle of generative AI is appropriate?
Yeah, I think it is, because look, there's so much data now, and this computing is getting better and better and more sophisticated. It makes sense that it will. Years ago, I heard a speech. I was sitting up in the top of a church, which was interesting. I just have a vision of being there, and the guy said, "We're right now." He was an AI person, I think, from MIT, and he said, "Right now we're at dolphin level intelligence of AI, and it's soon going to surpass humans. It's going to go from dolphin. Dolphins are pretty fucking smart to start with. It's going not smart enough, obviously, to get out of nets, but nonetheless smart." but it's going to surpass. And I thought, well, that makes sense because it's going to have more and more information. Especially if it's data heavy, it should do. The human brain can't, like a doctor can't read all the medical journals and all the latest new things. So it makes sense that it would be smarter in that regard. Maybe not kinder, not more creative and things like that. So yeah, I think the hype should be there. It makes sense.
Do you think OpenAI obviously is the leader right now? Do you think it's stable enough to continue?
I don't know. Like it was Netscape was the hot ticket item, and then it wasn't, right? So is it Netscape? I talk about this with Sam like this. Are you Netscape or are you something else? He's like, we're not Netscape. I'm like, well, you could be. I'm such a fun person to hang around. But they could be Netscape. Where's its business plan? There's a lot of competitors. It's, he's obviously a lightning rod, and this whole firing thing didn't help him much. It's obviously at the white hot center of everything, but I don't think it will remain there. No, I don't. No. I mean, unless he's the best business person in history, but I don't think he is.
Yeah,
he's
they
very
have a lot
talented.
of competition.
They do. That's what I mean. I'm always like, just like everyone was like, can you believe what happened to Tesla? I'm like, yes, that was so, we talked about it 2 years ago and I got all attacked by the Elon stance. I'm like, inevitable competition, inevitable. And this is a real pricey industry. There's no business plans. So much money running into it. Speaking of the Andreessen money, I'm sure it's all going into, after they're taking their crypto money that didn't do as well. They are always up to some scheme, aren't they?
I mean, that crypto thing is still unbelievable to me. Whatever. And then to have the audacity to come out and write a book about how good it is going to be after it's already failed.
Some of it is. Some of it is. Some of it is. Some of it is. Yeah.
You write a lot about the media business and journalism in the book. So on our AI theme, do you think AI is going to not kill, but seriously injure the media business?
AI will. I think it will affect it. I don't know if it'll kill it. I think killing is a little dramatic, but media people are dramatic. I think it could aid it in some ways. Just like did the internet kill us? Yeah. But did it aid us? Yeah.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Both.
The ones who are innovative and use these tools, sure. I don't know. It's like saying when the iPhone came out in 2007, would you have predicted Uber? Hurt the tax? No, you wouldn't have. Like, I don't know what's going to be made, but I do think we should take all these tools and use them and figure out where they're best to deliver stories and stuff like that. And I think those who resist it and just sort of, bemoan their fate are destined to fail. That's for sure.
Are you using it at all in your...
I use it every day. I try all the different ones, different things. So far, I haven't found that much that is helpful to me, but I'm not trying hard enough, right? It's my fault. Some of the summary stuff is interesting. I'm not doing enough writing for it to matter, right? I think some of the translation things on the podcasts we're trying out for our podcast to translate into other languages is cool. I just don't know how many listeners we have in Ethiopia, for example.
Right.
Do I need it? It's cool, or whatever the language happens to be. So I think that's cool. I think some of the synopsis stuff is cool, the transcription. But that doesn't feel like groundbreaking yet in podcasts. I don't think it'll make podcasts that are interesting. So how does that help me? There's not that much it helps me with yet. But I haven't. I'm not in the writing business or the making of big media company business. So if I were there, I'd think of it in advertising. I'd think of it in subscriptions and targeting people and creating all kinds of new kinds of newspapers for people, personalized newspapers. I would think about that.
Yeah, but you don't have to be in, let's say, the writing content business anymore. I mean, OpenAI just transcribed half of YouTube, it seems like, according to the New York Times.
Yeah.
So if they came to you and said, let us just transcribe, On with Kara Swisher for free, would you let that go into the model, or would you demand compensation? Or
yes,
would you
I would.
Just say,
they can't take my stuff. Yeah, they're not. They're old times. They're shoplifters. They've been shoplifters forever. So no, they're not just pointing to me. They're taking my things. So no, it's just like YouTube. And to me, the record industry figured this out. So did YouTube. They had to pay, right? So they can figure this out. That's what it reminds me of.
So
I know they're making all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So.
Well, right now we have these larger publications doing well, like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And then it seems like the middle has really been
hollowed out.
And then we have, I guess, like individual creators.
Yeah.
That's sort of my bet here with big technology.
Sure.
Is that the path that you see journalism going?
Yeah. You're going to have individual creators who are very influential, of which there are many now. or small companies like an Information or Puck or something like that, or small and whose revenues are in line with costs. That's really important, right? Even if it doesn't make that much money, your revenue needs to be in line with costs. So you're going to see a lot of that, and they're going to be highly influential, a lot of them. You don't need that much to be. Like, I have 3 people working on each of my podcasts, and I think our podcast's very influential. I think you have to have a good business, whether it's subscription or advertising or whatever you choose, whatever you're selling, swag or whatever the heck you want to do. And then you're going to have a couple big ones like the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, that kind of thing. I think the CNNs will figure it out. It's a global information network. They'll come up with a business in line with its costs. I don't think they're out at all. But that it's just a reassessment of where you make your money, which is important to do.
Yeah, and I used to have a confident answer when college students, for instance, would ask me, how do you break in to journalism? I'd be like, write your way in, and then someone like a BuzzFeed or a Vice will hire you.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. No, I think one of the greatest things that isn't happening is mentorship. There's not that. The mentorship is gone, I think, and that's really hard. It's going to be in little bits and pieces, but it's going to be very hard for younger reporters to really be mentored the way I was, for example.
Or even find work.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, then you have to be on your, it's a little more entrepreneurial, like I said. If you're not entrepreneurial, you're going to have a harder time.
Can I ask you how you think about your audience? Like, what is the audience for tech reporting? Because there's clearly like tech, people working in the tech industry. It is an interesting story for people outside of tech. So how do you think about it?
I have moved on from the tech bros. Right. I have such a different audience now. Like, I have regular people. I meet them all the time. On this book tour, it was an eye-opener. It's my podcast audience is who's buying all my stuff or listening to me. I have a wider range of people because I've been trying to widen it out. I'm not talking about just tech. I'm talking about tech's impact on their lives, especially kids with kids or things that affect me. So I've moved on from them a long time ago, which irks them, but oh well.
So that's interesting. So it's both people who tech impacts in their daily lives.
Tech impacts everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah. So I'm talking to couples. We have couples who call us at Pivot. We just learned to get along better. Well, great. That's a great product. Or, I didn't really understand the deleterious effects of social media. Oh, now I do. Oh, good. Great. I'm glad. My job, it might be outsourced. How should I think about this? Great. I'm here to help you,
You've also like moved beyond just tech news, right?
Yeah, I've always talked about media. We've always had a big media element to so I do a lot of media. I've been doing much more politics, but that's because tech has gone in the crosshairs of politicians. So that was a natural step. So I try to do adjacent things, and then things that just interest me, I just do myself.
So just to keep going on this, so when you think about your audience, it's tech for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to do that, you kind of had to shift beyond some of like the day-to-day stuff, like the stuff.
Yeah, I don't do beat reporting anymore.
Right. But even like what's happened, but you did do you broke a lot of news on the OpenAI firing.
I did. I just was bored. That's because I was really bored. My wife was away with the kids that weekend, and I was irritated by how bad the reporting was. And one of the things that really irritated me, this idea, there are all these rumors among smart people I know that were like, he's getting let go because of some gay love thing. And I was like, that's not true. Like, it pissed me off. Like, and I don't know why. I was like, oh, are you fucking kidding me? These assholes. This is what this is what the shit they're peddling. And so I got mad and I started looking into it. And then I'm like, oh, I'll just tweet it. And I'm really good. I have to say, I did a good job, didn't I? I still got it. I still got it. I don't want to have it for that much, but I was like, I just wanted to see how good I was and if I could use Twitter and Threads to do that. And I did. I got it all out. It was fun. I'm not going to do it regularly. I hear a lot of things I pass on to other people.
Do you think you needed a larger audience to then go into the tech for everyday people aspect?
No, because you could have the audience. Well, I've always thought you have I'm into the fan-based economy, right? I believe in fans. I have fans. I don't have readers. I have fans who want to hear what I have to say. And so I've always thought that. From the minute I did podcasts, I understood that right away. It was not the regular people. It was the people who you either have to be useful, entertaining, or must have. You can't get it anywhere else. Those are my three rules for any product I make. And so if you meet all three of them, you usually are successful.
Yeah, I want to ask you about speaking of this, the motivations of people that leak. Now, obviously, people leak because they have an axe to grind sometimes, but oftentimes people just leak because they want to. So can you talk about that a bit, like the motivation?
Yeah, I think that, I don't. Some people are nefarious and they have they want a job or something like that, but mostly they're just mad because it's not out there, and so they want to tell someone they trust. And so have become a very trustworthy people for someone, like that they feel like they're going to get a fair shake, or that I have the ear of powerful people, and therefore, if they tell me, it'll have some impact. Sometimes you get, people who are close. I have a lot of people close to Elon who are texting me, which I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear about this, about his personal problems. They're just
them here?
No, I don't. I don't, because I don't know if they're true or not.
All right.
So I suspect they are, but I don't know. But I think people just want to talk, and so I'm a good listener. And I know a lot, and I can find the right place to put it, and so I think that's why they leak. I think in general, I think everybody leaks. It's just not. I don't think it's such a shock that people would do that. And now today, everyone feels the ability to share is very, it's very current. People do that now on social media, so they don't mind sharing in general. There's no, was it Scott McNeely? There's no privacy. Get used to it. I think he was right when he said that. I don't think he meant it that way, but that's what I think is true.
What do you think sources look for then in a reporter? I mean, obviously, brand and publication work.
Sometimes it used to be we'd get everything at the Wall Street Journal. So no, it doesn't. That doesn't matter anymore. I think it's people they trust. I think it's people they think know what they're talking about, or they can reach a certain person. So I think a lot of it is trust. Is the trust that you will do a good job, a good and fair job for them. That's who leaks to me. People who think I'll do a good and fair job, and so that's who I focus in on. You don't get it right. I try to avoid people who are angry.
Right.
I just they're never going to be quite accurate, and then you get fucked. So I haven't yet gotten fucked, but I really do. I'm very careful about why they're talking to me. I always suspect they're up to something, and then usually they're not. But I start with the premise they're up to something.
Right. And I had this question for you about like the fact that you did 6 interviews with Jobs and that tech leaders are going direct now. But it's almost like when tech leaders go direct and like tech companies are just going direct, it's almost a bigger opportunity for, real
I
reporting.
love it. Go keep talking.
Yeah,
they never do well in those 3-hour conversations.
And the people that see that stuff are going to want to get the real story out.
Yeah, exactly. Let them do it. Good luck. You remember when Andreessen Horowitz was doing its media
Future?
up or whatever.
It's the past
Good luck.
now.
When they did that, they're like, one of them called me and they're like, we're going to beat you at your own game. I'm like, 1, you'll suck. 2, it's a shitty business. Enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Good luck. You aren't going to beat me. You'll close it down. And they, of course, close it down. Because it's a shitty business. It doesn't really have that much impact. And it's just easier to talk to a reporter. I've never met a group of people that actually talk about their disdain for the media that never stop thinking about the media. That's my interesting little... They're just very obsessed with the media in a way that I'm not obsessed with them, for sure.
Right.
Okay.
Last one for you. I've watched a good chunk of watched and listened to a good chunk of the book tour. You've been interviewed by Sam Altman, and you've gone on Bill Maher. Who was the favorite person that you were interviewed by?
None of them.
Come on, I have to pick one.
Probably Cuban. The best conversation was Cuban because I like him and we laughed a lot, so that was fun. But I'm always surprised by who does I thought Don Lemon was interesting. I thought that was because I was right about Elon firing him. Well, I told him Elon was going to fire him the minute that interview came out, and he did. And Don was like, "You're wrong," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm sorry." Night follows day in that regard.
Right.
I am being honest. I like them all because they're all different. That's why I designed it that way. If I did it with reporters who would have done a great job, there would have been similar interviews every time. And I thought these people had never done interviews, and they tried really hard to be good, right? And so every question, that was kind of cool, the effort. And then they're always different. Every conversation was different. And so it became interesting for me as opposed to just them. And so I was more interesting. And that way I liked it. Sometimes people surprised you. Sam Altman was he could have been a journalist, my friend. Like him going, I noticed, he goes, you write a lot about your dad, but there's only one line about your mother. And it's very glancing, but not very nice. What's that about? Oh,
good question.
It was a very good. I didn't answer it either, but he had it. He he knew where to push. I thought, wow, that guy could be a reporter. It was very funny. I was laughing. And I said afterwards, I was like, well done, Sam Altman. How did you see that? And then no reporters have ever asked me that, and he did. And that's a really good question. So anyway.
The book is Burn Book. It's by Kara Swisher. Best-selling book. You can pick it up at your bookstore of choice.
I like
yes,
that
congratulations.
part.
And then
Thank you.
We learned a little bit more about what the second one is going to be. So stand by for that. You can also find Kara on the Pivot podcast and on with Kara Swisher. Kara, thank you so much for joining. Great
thank you so much. I'm glad you're an entrepreneur now. It's fun, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, the last place I was at, BuzzFeed News, is no longer in existence. So
yeah,
I'm grateful to be doing the job.
And you are. Anyway.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time on Big Technology Podcast.